Welcome back to the Unacceptable News. I'm your host, Justin Bush. What the dog doing? Today's story is about government whistleblowers. So recently it was released by Lou Elizondo that he has a new book coming out in August. The title of the book is called Imminent, and he claims that it is a call to arms for people inside the government and apparently regular normal people, that change needs to take place with the UFO phenomenon. This story really centers around the skeptics' position that there is nothing to see here, that all of these government whistleblowers from 50 years ago all the way till today, there's really no information that they're actually releasing to the public. Everything that they have to say is essentially nonsense, that it's essentially a great big psyop, that there's a lot of talk and no movement to actually show what the truth is behind the UFO phenomenon. This is a great take, unfortunately. From Roswell, they had a public release that they had captured a flying disc. They immediately retracted that story and claimed that it was a downed weather balloon. For all the way until today, you have all these government officials coming out saying one thing and then providing zero evidence. And so when you have a person like Lou Elizondo, who apparently was part of ATIP at one point, the Pentagon claimed that ATIP was a DIA program. Lou Elizondo did not work for the DIA. He had no authority over the program. And then they came back and they kind of stated that, well, actually he was in a senior position in the program. And then, well, when he left, he had to brief in another person to take over his position at ATIP. And you have this kind of back and forth, where the truth becomes obscure, and skeptics love this. They love when a person comes forward and says, I work for a UAP task force, and the Pentagon says, no, you didn't. Senator Harry Reid, who left office, says, yes, he was. The Pentagon says, no, he wasn't. And so then you have this kind of issue. Well, Senator Reid is the one that approved the money for the program. So wouldn't he know who's briefing him on the results of the program? And then you have this kind of back and forth, like a big game of tennis. And so you end up having all these whistleblowers. They come forward, they say a lot of things. Bob Lazar or Lou Elizondo or people like Colonel Carl Nell, who did a recent appearance at the SALT conference and gave some extremely inflammatory statements with absolutely no backing. This is also the exact same argument that skeptics have made about David Grush and his admissions of these programs. The 40 whistleblowers that came forward to the Inspector General have released no information about what they were supposedly blowing the whistle on. We've had this happen year after year, decade after decade, with no real tangible proof of what's going on behind the scenes. Just false information, or it's just been a constant stream of information coming from behind closed doors with absolutely no verification to these arguments. And so really today what we're going to talk about are some of these latest whistleblowers, what they've provided, and whether or not they should be trusted. The reason we're talking about this is actually because of Lou Elizondo's book. Lou Elizondo has written a book called Imminent, which I've already mentioned, and apparently it's coming out in August. Now, this book had to pass the DOPSA review process from the Pentagon. So essentially there's a separate committee that goes over these books and movies and scripts and things that government officials or former government officials that have security clearances release to the public. This entire process, usually there are lawyers representing the government employee. They have this kind of back and forth. They read something, they highlight it, they say this needs to go. They kind of have a little fight over it. Sometimes things can be changed or amended, and they can get the information they want out with some redactions. But ultimately, this review process is to guarantee that classified information stays classified. So if you have a person that's going through DOPSR review process and their book is being pushed off to about a year after they started the process, then you know that there's been a lot of back and forth about the book. They've essentially gone back and forth with lawyers many times to clear the book of any classified information so it can be released to the public. Now, it's kind of ironic that the book is called Imminent and it takes a year to get released, but that's not really what we're talking about here. The reason we're bringing up this review process is because many people say that these government whistleblowers are actually a psyop. So all of these people, from Lou Elizondo to Carl Nell, David Grush, all of these different people, doesn't matter who they are. Okay, Robert Salas, just all of these different people that come forward with information from behind closed doors, the United States government in particular, they must have approval for the things they release. If they don't have approval to release this information, then they get arrested and go to jail, and many have over the years. There's been many people that have released classified government information that have been arrested on espionage charges. There have been many people that have released classified government information and have been arrested on the Espionage Act. These people are sharing classified information with people that do not have a clearance to have it, i.e. the American public. So you and me, we don't have the clearance for this information. They release this information, the government arrests them, charges them, and throws them in jail for violating their oath of office. So they've taken an oath of office, they've signed confidentiality agreements, and they have violated that. So now they get arrested and go to jail. None of these people, including Lou Elizondo, including people like Chris Mellon. Chris Mellon was an assistant undersecretary of defense at one point in time. He has a very high security clearance. When he came out to the New York Times about the ATIP program and supposedly released these videos, these classified videos that several years later the Pentagon admitted were real, when he released these so-called UFO videos, he was never arrested or charged, which makes many in the public believe that Chris Mellon actually had approval to release this information. If he didn't have approval, they should have arrested him for releasing it, but they didn't. Instead, they verified that these recordings were authentic, and they verified the ATIP program, and eventually people in the Pentagon verified that Lou Elizondo was somehow a part of the ATIP program. So you have all these people, they're releasing this information, but it's pre-approved releases, or at least it seems to be. If it wasn't a pre-approved release, why wouldn't they arrest them? So you have kind of all the fodder that the skeptics need to say, if, David Grush was really releasing classified information, he should be arrested on the spot. Yet he's not. None of them are. So you have to ask the question, with these so-called leaks, are these actually a part of a sophisticated psyop to give false information to the public about things that just aren't true? Like, how much of this information is verifiable? Now, they have these videos, but the truth is we don't know what the objects are. We hear the pilots, we know how they feel about what they're seeing, but we really don't have any verified information coming from these people to tell us what's actually going on. Robert Salas came forward after 20-some years stating a UFO interfered with our intercontinental ballistic missiles. So essentially his story is a UFO descended over a missile range that he was in charge of. He was a launch officer. When this came down, many people saw it. It shut down multiple missiles, I believe it was 10, that went into a no-fire situation, so they could not be fired. And then the UFO left. Now, he kept that secret for 20-some years. So you have to ask the question, if it's so imminent, if we're in so much danger, why are none of these, our nation's heroes, actually going to jail? If you were a launch officer and you thought this could be the end of the world from this strange UFO activity, why would you keep secret for 20-some years? If you were a hero and you were actually in the military and you were going to sacrifice your life for the betterment of the country, why wouldn't you go to jail to tell the people, the public, the most important information they'll ever learn in the history of the world. If this really is an imminent threat, like Lou Elizondo suggests it is, that this is a national security issue and that these objects are threatening our national security, then why aren't any of these people coming forward? Let me just read you this. This is a statement from Lou Elizondo about his book. It says, "It is my honor and my duty to share this information with you now. My new book, Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, will be published by William Morrow in August 2024. Imminent is my call to action. The stakes could not be higher. This is an accurate portrayal of the events as they happened. This book underwent a 9-month U.S. government security review, and I had a senior member of ATIP review the manuscript to ensure everything is exact and authentic. This is more than my story. It is our story, and I wrote it for you, the public, so that there is no question as to what we are dealing with and what the future might bring. After reading it, I think it will be clear why this topic is so incredibly important." And then it has some information about pre-ordering the book. So let's go back to it. It is his honor and duty. Well, if his duty is to protect the United States of America, and he knows that this is such an imminent threat to our national security, and there are corrupt people attempting to silence him, why wouldn't he immediately tell the public everything he knows and go to jail? Why wouldn't he sacrifice himself and his freedom for the future of the country if this is such a threat? And then we can go down. Imminent is his call to action. Well, why aren't you acting? Why did you be a part of this secret project and then wait all these years? I mean, we're talking about 5 years, 6 years since the release of the information from ATIP in 2017 to 2018. So you've spent 6 years not doing anything. Don't get me wrong, he's talked to the public, things like that, but it's not as if he's released this so-called classified information in these years. So you have people like Lou Elizondo, like Chris Mellon, that are making these big claims, making these claims about how dangerous this topic is and the corruption that are silencing these people and keeping this secret and how much danger we're in, and it's an imminent threat and a threat to national security, and yet none of them are coming forward. Robert Salas waited 20-some years. Lou Elizondo has waited at least 6 or 7 years now before this book comes out, and we don't even know if any of this information will be classified. In fact, since it passed the Dobson review, we can pretty much be sure that none of it's classified. So, if releasing this classified information is for the betterment of our country, it will protect our country from whatever this so-called threat is, none of these people are actually doing that. Let's go to Colonel Carl Nell. So just a few days ago during the SALT conference, Colonel Carl Nell spoke at length. He said he knew that non-human intelligence exists. It's on Earth, all these different things. He was certain of it. He went over his lengthy career, which was very lengthy. He worked for some of the top United States aerospace contractors, military contractors like Raytheon. He also had a long storied career in the United States military. If someone would know about these programs, it would be someone like him. We know that he worked for JSOC as some sort of command position with an emphasis on JSOC at one point in time. I don't have clarification on that, but essentially he was in the command structure for JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. It's in one of his bios. It's a very small blurb, which is why I don't know the full extent of it. But you have a person that high ranking that's been in military and military contracting for that many years, and he says, look, I know for a fact that aliens exist, essentially, non-human intelligence. They've changed all the acronyms. It used to be UFO, now it's UAP, and it used to be alien, and now it's NHI, and it doesn't really matter. But he says he knows for certain, right? And then later on, after this conference, it was clarified that he was one of the 40 whistleblowers that went to the Inspector General. Also, an admiral came out to support him and said, that guy's telling the truth, right? So there's several other military people bolstering his claims, which is phenomenal. but so far he's released not one shred of evidence. So, you have these 40 whistleblowers that apparently this is such an imminent threat that they are blowing the whistle to the Inspector General, but they are not willing to risk their lives or their freedom to help the American public, which unfortunately gives the skeptic all that they possibly need to say, look, if there was really something this important, this dangerous, then they would have already came forward. They would have came forward 70 years ago. We would have people coming forward in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. But all we really have are a bunch of people telling stories with almost zero physical proof or evidence. Even the videos that they released are so grainy, you can't even tell what you're really looking at. Don't get me wrong, I believe that the videos are genuine, but you have this kind of issue where these people are attempting to protect themselves and their own lives. Meanwhile, you have people calling them heroes, but they're not doing what a hero would do, sacrificing themselves for the greater good. So you have this kind of upside down world where, yes, they're talking about it, and God knows what kind of horrible things is happening to some of these people behind the scenes. I'm not trying to personally downplay what they've done. I personally think, and I didn't used to think this, but after watching this all play out, I at first thought this was probably a psyop. They're pushing out some, they're just kind of slowly getting the community ready for like, hey, UFOs are real, which the Pentagon has admitted that they're real. We don't know who they are. We know of no earthly explanation for them, which is fine, right? So people in the Pentagon put that out some years ago. But now that I'm kind of watching the whole thing play out, I'm watching other people line up to tell their stories to the Inspector General. I'm watching them go through the DOPSA review process to make sure no classified information is being released. I'm watching people like David Grush, openly admit that there are threats, credible threats to his life. Lou Elizondo, same thing. Daniel Sheehan, the lawyer who represents a lot of these whistleblowers, said something similar recently, that there was a person that supposedly was coming forward from inside one of these programs. They died, and it was said that they committed suicide. And they said, hey, please do a thorough investigation, because there's a very good chance this person was about to be a whistleblower, and that gives them every incentive to silence them. So, you have these rumors of threats. Even with David Grush, he made multiple police reports. He took it to the Inspector General's office. Whatever threat to his life, he's made it very clear that some threats were made to him that he feared for his life. Are these people just... Here's my take. I think these people are genuine. I think they're trying to release this information, and I think that they just don't want to die. I think that they're afraid to die. They don't want to die. They don't want to lose their families, their wives, their children. And they're simply not willing to... They're willing to risk their lives to an extent, but they're not willing to lose them to tell the world the truth about what's really going on. To illuminate you as to what we're talking about, here's a clip from Colonel Carl Nell at the SALT conference.
And my last assignment was involved with the UAP task force, which maybe is the most apropos for this discussion.
And so, Carl, here's the million-dollar question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
And Carl, what evidence have you seen? What was the moment where you developed this level of conviction? Because what you're saying is extremely consequential and very important. And I know that a lot of people here, even perhaps, may not believe that statement.
Right. Well, probably a better way to ask that is, how can the folks in the audience come to a common understanding of what this phenomenon is? And so there's sort of two tracks here. One is from first principles, and another is actually from the data. So let's take a look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who was the defense chief for Canada, has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Ham Eshed, the head of Israel's, or the former head of Israel's Space Force, has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing. Lou Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially level material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP disclosure amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data. From a first principles standpoint, what's so unusual about this realization? There's billions of stars in the galaxy. Life here evolved in 500 million years, which is basically a blink of an eye. We've found planets around every star that we've looked at. It's likely that the universe is full of life. If you look at the SETI program in particular, the SETI program has all the same assumptions that you would accept and probably make with respect to this topic, except that they believe that non-human intelligence is transmitting signals here. But at the same time, like, we're not transmitting signals. SETI doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems, which you could argue our technology is moving away from. We're going to satellite, we're going to fiber. Broadcast TV is a thing of the past. And if you get to some state where society is stable, maybe we don't need ballistic missile early warning systems. So the other guy is probably not going to transmit. But what the other guy may do is come here if that's possible to do. And there's physics models that suggest that may be possible.
So with people making these massive claims about UFOs and, non-human intelligence like Colonel Carl Nell, you have all these people that say, UFOs are real. I've seen them. I was there. I know for a fact. And yet none of these people have taken the big leap of releasing verifiable physical evidence of this phenomena. And so the public is in this state of limbo. And even though I personally believe that many of these people, not all of them, but many of them are actually telling the truth, the skeptics have everything they need to destroy these people publicly. And so what do you think? Do you think these military insiders are part of one large psyop against the public? Or do you think they're genuine and they're actually trying to help the situation? And that's the news. If you'd like to support our channel, go to the description or in the pinned comment down below. That's the unacceptable news. Don't like, don't subscribe, just run.